So I want to talk about the spectrum. Thank you. I want to talk about the spectrum of joy. Um, I'm going to talk about some things. The things that I'm going to talk about are not comprehensive. There's more things. But this is some of them. So joy is one component of goodness. It's not the only one. And joy itself isn't one thing. It's a spectrum of experiences and expanding from basic safety to profound realization. So when we have a sense of these different types of joy, it can help us recognize where we are, what supports we need, and what becomes possible as we develop. So if we start with something like the joy of ethical integrity, that's freedom from remorse. It's the freedom from the shame and moral dread when we've done something that hurts somebody else, or when we've been out of integrity with the values that we have. And it shows up by a sense of settledness in living aligned with your values. It shows up in an absence of anxiety, hiding from, pretending, or managing your story in order to fabricate something that actually is not correct. There's a relief, a sense of conscience. And there's like a being able to look at what you did without this like cringing or like this pulling back, the sense of, ugh, the pain of recognition that something happened that wasn't right. So some of the obstacles that we can experience in that is like a sense of perfectionism, that we can become like binary. It's either we're completely perfect or there's no way that we can get it right. We can be operating from inherited values that aren't actually yours. And what I saw in the monastery a lot was an ethical obsession, like an endlessly questioning purity. And sometimes I sense that that was a way of avoiding facing deeper issues of not trusting one's own fundamental worthiness. Sometimes we can be carrying old guilt and old shame from things that happened in the past that we haven't processed. And also we can be caught between different value systems, the values of our family, the values of our culture, and they can be radically different from our own values. So what supports us having access to the kind of joy that comes from ethical integrity is making amends when possible, honest self-reflection without beating yourself up, daily acts of integrity, returning pens, change, saying uncomfortable truths, and being clear about the values that you have and aligning your behavior with them incrementally, so it's not like a sudden shock to the system. And then working with others, a mentor, community, sangha, that has clear ethical standards that you reflect on. Learning to distinguish the difference between ethical clarity and compulsive self-doubt. And compassion. Is it possible to be imperfect, which we all are, and still fundamentally good? And then having peers or people or sanghas or mentors where you can talk through ethical dilemmas so that you're not just in patterns looping yourself. So a sign that you're experiencing this is that you can sleep without thinking about these behaviors or patterns. There's sometimes more ease in social situations, a little bit less about managing your own image. There can be spontaneous generosity without any hidden agenda. There can be less need to be defensive. There can be more natural honesty. Lying can feel like awkward, uncomfortable, or effortful. One can hear criticism with a little bit less collapsing. And that we have a way of resolving ethical questions rather than just looping. We can acknowledge our mistakes, and that doesn't immediately put us into questioning our fundamental worthiness. And we can be honest about our struggles without collapsing into toxic shame. So another joy is the joy of safety and trust. It's being able to relax in your body, relax in your skin, relax in your life. It's when your nervous system feels safe enough to be present, when you trust in yourself, others, and basic goodness. It's the relaxation that allows openness. And this basic safety and trust is foundational for most of all of the other joys that follow. When we have secure enough attachment, it means that we are able to reach out when we're struggling and trust that somebody will respond. We can be upset with someone and know that the relationship won't end. We can think that it's possible that goodwill can come from others. We're not immediately suspicious or cynical. And we can let people see we're struggling, we're not okay. And that we have within us at least the possibility that repair after rupture is possible. It's not the complete ending. And what many of us have been dealing with is that we've got early attachment patterning and we've got trauma that creates ongoing hypervigilance. We might currently be in situations that are unskillful or unsafe. And we might, from our patterns, unconsciously being recreating unsafe dynamics. Where it gets trickier is when we start using transcendent teachings to move past the legitimate need for safety. We can be isolated. We can not have enough relationships where we can explore this skillfully. And our patterns of control can prevent us from relaxing. So the things that helps us access this kind of basic joy are the body-based practices, movement, breath work. It's healing relationships, which some of you have expressed are happening in the program, or you've shared yesterday were happening in the context of this retreat. Some of you have opened up with me or have shared about what happens in your peer groups or with your buddies. It's having community with shared values that's safe. It's having healthy boundaries. It's practices that build internal resources like grounding, like self-compassion. It's doing what we're doing here with creating the ideal support figures and having them enhance the 5 qualities. Some people respond really well to predictable routines and environments. And it's learning to ask for some more support in accessible, safe, small ways. So signs that we're experiencing this is our belly softens, our jaw unclenches. We can experience a full breath. Our sleep improves. We're less startled. We have more capacity and willingness to be vulnerable. We can be alone with less anxiety. Laughter comes more easily. We can be present with others without constantly scanning for threats or feeling like the worst thing might happen. And we can receive comfort from others when we're not feeling great. And we begin to start sensing that generally, though not always, people mean well. So another kind of joy is the joy of tracking, of self-regulation. And we don't normally think of it that way, because normally what we're aware of is the opposite of being out of our window of tolerance. But this is the joy that comes when we can recognize what our window of tolerance is, and we've developed the tools to return to it. And so that includes awareness of nervous system states, of noticing when you're getting activated, when you're feeling overwhelmed, when you're starting to shut down, and having practices that help you return. And so what this brings is confidence that you can handle your experience because you've got the tools when things start getting too much, and the awareness and the discernment, as well as this sense of just knowing what you know, this bigger awareness, this meta awareness. When our patterns shift, we can start saying, I'm getting overwhelmed. Can we pause for a moment when you're speaking with somebody? You can trust others to help support you. So it's not just like white knuckling it alone. You can front load buddy practices in front of challenging situations to help regulate you. Asking somebody just to be present when you're activated. And there's a sense of having resources and people and knowing who you can call. I'm activated. I need somebody to support. Who can I reach out to? Obstacles include difficulty sometimes naming or identifying emotions, a habit to disconnect from the body. When our window of tolerance is often narrow, not fully understanding how our nervous system works, or a sense of shame when we move out of our window of tolerance, as if somehow it's our fault or that we didn't do something good enough. And when we're too isolated, when we don't have enough support or feedback or buddies that we can automatically or easily reach out to. What supports us having more access to this particular kind of joy is learning about our window of tolerance. What are the specific signs that help us know that we're getting towards the edge, that we're starting to feel overwhelmed, that we're moving outside of our capacity to manage? That can be body scan practices, the more capacity to note or to label emotions, to work with small doses, titrate, to learn how to move between something that's activating and settling. So that's called pendulating. And being able to co-regulate with peers, with your ideal support figures, with teachers. Sometimes journaling for people helps pattern recognition. Sometimes naming what's going on out loud, or when you feel safe with others. And so when you are experiencing this kind of the joy of knowing your window of tolerance, you're okay saying, oh, I'm activated. It's just like fact. Like I've got hands, I've got a nose. I'm wearing clothes, I'm activated. It's not a big deal. And instead of being swept away, it's just like a recognition. And that with that recognition, there's more capacity to name what I'm feeling. Oh, I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling overwhelmed. Oh, I'm starting to lose contact with my body. And then to have more skill and knowing what kinds of practices helps with the different ways we tend to experience moving out of our window of tolerance. What shows up is often a faster recovery when we get dysregulated, more capacity to ask for help, less fear, and a growing sense of capacity. I can work with this. And a sense of being able to say, I need a minute without like a disaster or some kind of like fear that terrible consequences are going to happen. So with this, then we have the capacity to feel more fully. And so when we are moving away from a dismissive tendency that tends to shut down our feelings, it means that we have the capacity to feel things that weren't accessible before. Sometimes people say they feel more anger or more sadness or more grief, but they can also say that they're feeling more joy. More parts of one's body start coming alive. The range of emotional experience starts to expand. So as we are shifting from our attachment wounding to more of a secure patterning, one can notice there's anger without terror of being abandoned. You can feel sad without collapsing into I'm all alone. You can have a feeling of feeling happy or joy without immediately thinking this won't last or something bad is going to happen immediately. You can ask for what you need without feeling guilty or ashamed or that something about that is wrong. It's possible to receive care without being suspicious about what their motives are. You can disappoint somebody and trust that the relationship will survive. You can recognize you're imperfect, like everybody else, and still feel worthy of love. You can share your joy with others and trust that they can be genuinely happy for you. You can be messy and confused and dysregulated and trust somebody will still be there. So this kind of joy is the profound relief of like, oh, I get to be a human being. And it's going to be okay. We're all going to survive that. Then there's the joy of less anxiety, where there's a reduction in constant vigilance. It's feeling safer in your own skin. It's developing discernment, which is different than constantly scanning for threats. It's a shift in the nervous system baseline from danger, danger, danger to okay, okay, okay. And we start having the capacity to distinguish real threats from habits. The pattern that just has us scanning for threat because that's what we're used to. So when we have more secure attachment, it shows up in things like we don't assume the worst when somebody doesn't text you right back. You can be in a group without constantly reading the room for danger. You can trust that if something's wrong, people will tell you. You don't have to be hypervigilant in order to relax. So the signs that you're experiencing it is that there's less catastrophizing. There's more capacity to be with uncertainty without anxiety. There's more confidence that you can handle what's going to come. The mind becomes more quieter. There's less racing thoughts. The body's more relaxed. It's just a baseline. We can enjoy time with others without exhaustion from scanning. So now there's the joy of settledness and simple presence. This is like being here for simple things. It's like delight in the ordinary stuff, a sunset, a meal, a conversation, a flower, a child smiling, seeing a puppy. It's presence without an agenda. It's the capacity that is able to just savor what's happening now. It's not needing anything other than what's happening now to feel okay. It's the richness of being present. And so the relational dimension of this is that we can start feeling present with somebody. We can keep 60% of our attention inward, or most of our attention inward. We can do that without needing to multitask. We can do that listening, not just impatient waiting to talk. We can enjoy being silent with another person. It can mean delighting in simple things, a walk, a meal, sitting on the porch, a hug. Obstacles that keep us from this is the kind of anxiety or future focus where the mind is always 3 steps ahead, where there's an inability to open up to pleasure, where there's always seeking the next thing, where rest feels like failure because we're not being productive, where the sense of it should be better, different, or dismissing ordinary pleasures as somehow unspiritual, or when we get addicted to digital stuff and we're constantly screening as a way of input and our attention is fragmented. So what supports us with this kind of joy is slowing down, really tasting food, feeling textures, pausing when we see puppies or babies or flowers or whatever the thing is that makes you light up, and enjoying it. Walking meditation where we connect with the earth. One thing at a time practice, gratitude practice. Being deliberate about removing distractions, turning our phones off at meals, and doing things that are just nourishing, whether it's art, music, nature, dancing, or just being able to relax and be silent with another without needing to fill the space. And when you're experiencing this, some of the things that you might notice is that time seems to do weird things. It expands. Colors can seem more vivid. There can be aha moments of just like spontaneity or just awe. You can finish a meal and remember what you ate and what it tasted like. There can be just real interest in what somebody else is experiencing. There's contentment without so much stimulation. Smiling for no reason. Can be present with somebody without wondering. Then there's the joy of deeper concentration. This is the samadhi, absorptions, the unification. These are the jhana factors. And this is what happens when the mind gathers and can stay with an object. It's the one-pointed focus. It's access to deeper states of concentration. And there's pleasure that comes from this kind of unification, as well as mental clarity. Classically, the stages are recognizable with different signs that there's sustained awareness on a particular object. We recognize our thoughts without being pulled away from them. The body starts to feel tingles and warmth and energy flows, can be just rapturous. And then we can feel mental pleasure, a deep, profound happiness. And then we can sit without any thoughts. And then eventually, as our mind unifies more and more, the subject-object duality starts to soften or dissolve. We experience just the nature of consciousness. In a relational dimension, what we can notice is feeling collective support. We can start tuning into the field. We can notice the safety of a sangha allows deeper letting go. We can understand how shared silence can deepen everyone's practice. So common obstacles is that our attention is dispersed. We can have apprehension or fear of it, fear of losing ourselves. We can mistake dullness for calm. We can be restless and makes it difficult to settle long enough. We can think that concentration is about something. We can be impatient without being able to sustain the gradual development. So access points are meditation, movement, body sweeping, metta generating warmth. Some people find extended retreat time supportive. Other time, people find extended nature time supportive. Sometimes people find practicing in a group supportive. One of the ways you can experience this is that your breath becomes subtle. It can become almost imperceptible. The body feels energized, and yet it's still. And the sense of concrete edges starts softening. There can be tingles and warmth, the sense of time distortion. There can be an effortlessness, sustaining of attention, a deep refreshment, a less interest in mind wandering. Then there's joy of belonging, joy of contributing, interpersonal relational experiences of feeling part of something that's bigger, knowing that what you do matters, where there's mutuality, where there's reciprocity, of being seen, of seeing others. It's the pleasure of healthy interdependence. And we can notice our own patterns shifting towards more secure attachment when we can offer help without needing to be needed. We can receive help without feeling like a burden. We can trust our place in community even when we're not contributing. We can be authentically ourselves and know that we still belong. And we can have conflicts and trust that repair is possible. And so what keeps us from this is our sense that we need to do things alone, the sense of shame that having needs somehow is a sign of weakness, that previous wounding or relational repairs that haven't healed creates guardingness. A practice is private, the sense of I need to give, but it's hard for me to receive. And so then what can support all of this is being part of a practice community or a sangha where these things are normalized, offering service, sharing your practice, learning how to receive help and make that something that's ordinary. Group practice, accountability partnerships. And so signs of this can be a sense of just genuine interest in how others are doing, when asking for help feels natural, when we celebrate somebody else's success without envy rising, when we have the sense of being part of a collective and not just being focused on me, when energy increases when we connect rather than drains us, when we feel resourced by community. And there's less sense of loneliness even when we are alone. So then there's sustained body joy. You know, it's a kind of aliveness. It's a feeling of happiness or joy. It's a sustained energetic openness. It's an embodied presence. It's the pleasure that is not to be feared. It's in a relational context. It's safe contact, safe touch, knowing you can be held without it having to necessarily be sexual, feeling presence with others as feeling nourishment, body relaxing in the presence of trusted people, play, movement, dance. And so we have obstacles, you know, the sense of the shame, the split between what's spiritual and what is the body, the residues of trauma where pleasure triggers defensiveness, any kind of suspicion around it, when we've come from traditions that the teachings invited us to transcend rather than to inhabit our body experience, when we're feeling burnt out or depleted, we've got no energy, when we're chasing intense experiences, we miss sustained presence. And so the things that can support is yoga or qigong or dance, body practices that allow our awareness to feel what's happening, where we move more into unification of body and mind with concentration. Body work, massage, where we're working with the body experience and learning to release it. Breath practices, moving with the subtle energy body. So ways that we can notice we're experiencing it is that our body feels like a home, not a vehicle or a problem. There's aliveness without agitation. We can feel pleasure without immediately wanting more. The breath moves freely. We can notice the energy flowing. It's not blocked, it's not leaking. Our attention is relaxed, alert. There's a feeling of like our cells are smiling. And we can receive touch without freezing or immediately our mind moving into sexualizing. Then we move into the whole realm of Brahma Viharas, the love of joy or the joy of love, of kindness, of mudita, of equanimity. It's a lived experience. Joy in others' joy, mudita. Love is a natural state. It's not an achievement. It's a compassion, is a capacity to feel what's happening without necessarily becoming absorbed into the suffering. And we can notice this as our heart being open, warm. And so in relationship, when this shows up as a secure attachment pattern, we can recognize that you can love someone and disagree with them. You can be genuinely happy for someone else's good fortune. You can offer compassion without taking on their pain. You can have clear and appropriate boundaries and still care. Your heart can break from grief, from sadness, and you can still stay open. So what keeps us from this is when we have a defendedness against being hurt, when we take on others' pain without boundaries, when we are enabling rather than helping. When we're brilliant at loving everyone else except ourselves. When we have sentimentality where we can feel things, but we're not connecting to what's underneath it. When love is transactional. When we are conditioned to be nice rather than genuine, kind, real. And so the Brahmavihara practices, the loving kindness practice, the mudita practice, the Tonglen practice, which comes from the Tibetan tradition of taking on other suffering and sending the goodness, the grieving and forgiveness work that we have, the working with befriending our inner parts, our younger parts. And then we can see, signs, a sense of warmth in our heart, genuine delight in others' good fortune, spontaneous kindness. It's not performed. We can hold pain, we can feel it. We're not collapsing or hardening. Sometimes we can notice less judgment. Tears might flow a whole lot more easily. We're wanting to give, but there's no martyrdom. There's more of a yes to life. And so then we move on to the joy of insight and liberation. So that's when we're seeing through the veils. It's the direct knowing of our own nature. It's the freedom from mistaken identification. It's a lightness of being. It's a recognition of awareness itself. And each insight brings its own delight. So when we bring this kind of liberation into the relational field, we can notice that being with others feels less effortful or effortless. We can be alone without loneliness, and we can be with others without losing ourselves. There's less need to manage how we are being perceived, and conflicts don't threaten who we are, our sense of ourselves. We can be intimate and close without fear of engulfment, and we can be separate without fear of abandonment. Joy with others and joy alone both feel natural. And so, from a relational perspective, your awakening isn't separate from relationship. It is included and embraces connection. So the signs that you're experiencing it, it's like this sense of course, there's a sense of obviousness of what's been true, like laughter at the cosmic joke of what we're navigating, like the simultaneous ordinariness and profundity of our life. And then with that, there's less contraction. There's a literal kind of unburdening. There's less concern with image. There's more space around things. There's less need to defend. There's more simplicity. Complications tend to fall away. Confidence is not necessarily based on achievement or performance. Peace that comes, which isn't solely dependent on circumstances. Awareness was never not here. And there's more ease with both solitude and intimacy. Being with others can feel more natural, not like work. So the spiral path is how we integrate. These joys, they build on each other. We can't access a liberating joy without the foundation of safety. We need ethics. The path is developmental, but it's also nonlinear. And so at any point on the path, we can dip into these higher truths, higher joys, these joys that come from more profound realization. And that can support us to do more of the developmental foundations. We might have deep insight experiences, and it still might require years of integration work. So all of these joys are present. One does not cancel the other. The different practices that we have emphasizes different kinds of joys. The classical practice emphasizes concentration and insight. The integrated meditation program includes sustaining the 5 qualities so that our inner patterns start to shift. And so joy then becomes both the path and the fruit of the path. It's a way that we cultivate, and it is the result of our cultivation. So why I wanted to explore the spectrum of joy is that we're combining traditional meditation practices with attachment repair work. And this is not common in most meditation communities. In my opinion, I think it's essential. And it'll be up to you to comment how you're finding it, whether you think it is or not either. But the reason why I want to bring this in is because I have never, ever heard any teacher talk about joy as a relational experience before, or the path of awakening in a relational context. This is brand new information. I just thought of it last night. And so the developmental foundation, it's not that we do one and then we have the other. They are moving together. It's like building a house. You need the foundation before you can put on the roof. The early kinds of joys of safety and regulation and ethical integrity, they're foundational. We can't develop the higher kinds of joy without them. Concentration and insight don't stabilize. So our practice includes attachment repair alongside meditation. We're not just sitting together, we're creating this relational safety and attunement that allows these deeper joys and relational joys to emerge and persist. So from a classical perspective, joy, piti, is the 4th of the 7th factors of awakening. It's seen as energizing and important, but ultimately it is seen as something that you transcend in favor of equanimity. The progression in a classical Buddhist meditation is joy arises, it settles into equanimity, and equanimity is the more refined state. This makes sense within that framework, but it can lead to dismissing the importance of joy, dismissing safety as foundational, bypassing developed needs in terms of higher states, of leaving practitioners with insights that they can't integrate. So in our approach, we're taking a slightly different approach. Joy is both developmental and enduring. You don't transcend the joy of safety or ethical integrity. All levels remain relevant even as the practice deepens. So relational repair work creates the foundation classical meditation often skips. And the 5 qualities, safety, attunement, comfort, delight, encouragement, they are not luxuries. They're essential supports. So we use meditation and relationship to access the full spectrum. And so attachment repair as a Sangha activity, as far as I'm aware of, this is the only program that is doing that. You're not just fixing something that's broken, you're building capacity to experience the foundational joys that make deeper practice possible. You're stabilizing insights that might otherwise slip away. You're integrating awakening experiences instead of having them remain as just pink moments. It's joy as both the path we are cultivating and the result of the path we are cultivating. So the work we're doing, the dyads, the triads, is not separate from our meditation practice. It is creating the conditions for our meditation to transform our baseline experiences. So the reason why we emphasize the 5 qualities is that when they become sufficiently present, our baseline patterns shift. And as these patterns shift, you have more capacity to make good use of traditional and classical meditation practices and begin to recognize what all these joys were pointing to, which is that the capacity for being is inherently pleasurable. And so this is why we are doing attachment repair work as a Sangha activity, because the path to discovering your inner source goes through relationship, not around it.